"Gary," I said, after explaining the basic need for a motion-triggered outdoor sound system. "The application is a bit unique." "Unique is my middle name," Gary chirped enthusiastically. "What you got? Scaring raccoons out of the trash? Setting up a spooky soundscape for Halloween? Automatically playing Eye of the Tiger when you pull into the driveway?" "Something more along the lines of neighborly notification," I said carefully. "The sensor needs to be very directional. Weatherproof, obviously, and the audio files it triggers." I paused, took a breath, and played him a 30-second clip of the 78th Fraser Highlanders Pipe Band playing Scotland the Brave at full volume through my phone. Gary listened, head tilted, his eyes widened. A slow grin spread across his face. "Whoa, motion activated bagpipes." He savored each word. "Dude, that is majestically insane. Why?" "Let's just say I'm exploring innovative, non-confrontational methods of establishing clear property line awareness," I replied smoothly. "Right on, man. Property line awareness. I love it. My name is Kevin. I live on a street that looks like it was designed by a committee aiming for maximum inoffensiveness. We're talking beige houses, meticulously edged lawns, and the kind of soul-crushing quiet that usually only exists in libraries or outer space. I work from home, something involving spreadsheets and enough corporate jargon to make your eyes glaze over. Which means my backyard is my sanctuary. My little patch of green where I can escape the tyranny of pivot tables and synergy meetings. All I want is to grill a burger, maybe sand a piece of wood for some half-finished project, or throw a slobbery tennis ball for my aging golden retriever, Buster, without causing an international incident. Apparently that's too much to ask. My neighbor to the left is Karen. Karen, whose house shares a fence line with mine, a fence line she patrols with the vigilance of a hawk guarding its nest against particularly noisy squirrels. Karen possesses hearing that would make a bat jealous, and a tolerance for external stimuli roughly equivalent to that of a hibernating bear rudely awakened mid-winter. The gentle whoosh of my sprinkler system? Aggressively aquatic. The cheerful chirping of sparrows at the bird feeder I naively installed? Avian agitation. The sound of me breathing too loudly while pulling weeds? Okay, maybe not that last one, but I wouldn't put it past her. The latest offense occurred last Saturday. It was a beautiful afternoon. I decided to fire up the grill for the first time this season. Nothing fancy, just a couple of burgers. Buster was lounging nearby, occasionally sighing with contentment. The loudest noise was the gentle sizzle of beef patties hitting the hot grates. It was by any reasonable standard the epitome of suburban peace. Until Karen materialized at the fence. She didn't call my name. She just appeared. Her face contorted in an expression of profound suffering, like she was witnessing a war crime instead of a man cooking dinner. "Kevin?" Her voice was a strained whisper, as if the very act of speaking caused her physical pain. "Please, that sizzling, it's incredibly invasive. It's penetrating the tranquility of my meditation sanctuary." Her meditation sanctuary was her screened-in porch, which directly faced my grill. I looked at the burgers, which were sizzling with polite enthusiasm, not exactly roaring like a jet engine. "Sizzling, Karen. Seriously, I'm just grilling." "It's the frequency," she insisted, pressing her fingers to her temples. "It's high-pitched and erratic. And the smell, it's completely overwhelming my lavender diffuser. Can't you cook inside? Or perhaps switch to boiling? Boiling is much quieter." Boiling. She wanted me to boil my burgers. "Karen, it's grilling. It's what people do, outside, when it's nice." "Not this loudly," she hissed. "Some of us require absolute silence to achieve inner peace. I must insist you cease this auditory assault immediately." She gestured vaguely towards my grill. "Or I will be forced to file another complaint. Another complaint. Because apparently my previous transgressions of existing too audibly had already resulted in polite but firm notes slipped under my door and passive-aggressive comments logged with our toothless HOA. I sighed. "Look, I'll be done in 15 minutes. 15 minutes of sonic torture," she declared, clutching her chest dramatically before retreating back into her beige bastion of enforced serenity. I finished grilling my burgers, but the joy was gone. They tasted faintly of resentment and petty tyranny. How could anyone demand absolute silence from their neighbor's backyard? Did she expect me to communicate via semaphore flags? To install soundproof glass around my entire property? The sheer, unmitigated gall of it. Predictably, the official notification arrived a few days later. Not a fine, not yet anyway. Just a letter from the Oakwood Valley HOA, CC'd to City Code Enforcement, just for kicks, referencing a formal complaint received regarding disruptive sounds, specifically persistent cooking noises emanating from Lot 14. It politely reminded me of the community's commitment to mutual respect and tranquility, and strongly urged me to take steps to abate noise disturbances and be more considerate of neighbors seeking quiet enjoyment of their property. Abate noise disturbances. The disturbance of sizzling meat. I crumpled the letter. Be more considerate? I was considerate. I didn't blast music. I didn't host wild parties. My dog barked less than Karen complained. This wasn't about consideration. This was about her wanting to dictate the ambient noise level of the entire planet from her screened-in porch. Fine. She wanted quiet. She wanted control over the sounds reaching her precious meditation sanctuary. Okay. Challenge accepted. But she wasn't going to like my solution. My mind started racing. I needed something that wasn't constantly noisy, thus avoiding direct violation of noise ordinances. Something targeted, something triggered by her, something uniquely, gloriously annoying. My first thoughts were juvenile. A hidden speaker playing fart noises whenever she walked by? Too crude. An ultrasonic pest repeller aimed at her porch? Might bother Buster, and the science is shaky. Blasting death metal? Too easy to complain about, too obviously retaliatory. No, this required artistry, subtlety, initially, plausible deniability, for a while, and a sound that was both unmistakable and universally recognized as not quiet. What sound truly pierces the veil of tranquility? What sound carries with proud, unapologetic volume? What sound would make Karen's lavender-diffused meditation sanctuary feel like the front lines of the Battle of Bannockburn? Bagpipes. Oh yes, the skirl of the great Highland bagpipe. Piercing drones, wailing chanters, the musical equivalent of a tartan-clad declaration of war against silence. It was perfect. But how to deploy them? Real bagpipes were out. Finding a piper willing to hide in my bushes and blast Scotland the Brave on command seemed impractical, not to mention expensive. Digital was the way to go. High-fidelity recordings of championship pipe bands, readily available online. And the trigger? Motion activation. A sensor precisely aimed. Not at my whole yard, not at the street. Aimed specifically at the area Karen frequented when she was most likely to be complaining about noise, the edge of her patio, the path leading to her prize-winning and suspiciously silent rose bushes, right near the property line. She steps into the zone. She gets the pipes. Simple. Elegant. Diabolical. I pulled up the HOA bylaws and city noise ordinances again. Most dealt with sustained noise levels over a certain decibel limit, or noise during specific quiet hours, usually late night, early morning. My system wouldn't be sustained. It would be brief, intermittent blasts of glorious sound. And the beauty part? Karen would be the one triggering it. Her movement would cause the noise. How could she complain about a noise she herself initiated? Checkmate, Your Majesty of mandatory quiet. I decided to gloss over the inevitable nuisance complaints for now. Phase 1 would be plausible deniability. Bagpipes? How strange. I didn't hear anything. Must be the wind carrying sound from that Scottish festival miles away. There was no Scottish festival miles away. This project, however, required skills beyond downloading MP3s and harboring grudges. I needed to rig outdoor sensors, weatherproof speakers, amplifiers, and some kind of smart controller to tie it all together. Time to call in the experts, or at least people who wouldn't run screaming when I explained the plan. My first call was to Gadget Gary's Custom Electronics. Gary was a local legend among the home automation crowd. Young, perpetually caffeinated, with a basement workshop that looked like Doc Brown's lab after a Red Bull sponsorship. His website promised solutions for everything from smart lighting to automated pet feeders. Motion-activated bagpipes seemed right up his alley. Gary, I said, after explaining the basic need for a motion-triggered outdoor sound system. The application is a bit unique. Unique is my middle name, Gary chirped enthusiastically. What you got? Scaring raccoons out of the trash? Setting up a spooky soundscape for Halloween? Automatically playing Eye of the Tiger when you pull into the driveway? Something more along the lines of neighborly notification, I said carefully. The sensor needs to be very directional. Weatherproof, obviously. And the audio files it triggers. I paused, took a breath, and played him a 30-second clip of the 78th Fraser Highlanders Pipe Band playing Scotland the Brave at full volume through my phone. Gary listened, head tilted, his eyes widened, a slow grin spread across his face. Whoa, motion-activated bagpipes. He savored each word. Dude, that is majestically insane. Why? Let's just say I'm exploring innovative, non-confrontational methods of establishing clear property line awareness, I replied smoothly. Right on, man. Property line awareness. I love it. Gary was already sketching on a notepad. Okay, so we need outdoor-rated PIR sensors, maybe focused beam ones to minimize false triggers. We could use a Raspberry Pi as the controller, super flexible. Need a weatherproof amplifier. Decent wattage. And speakers? Gotta hide those speakers. He rubbed his hands together. This is gonna be epic. Gary was in. Next, installation. I needed someone who could bury wires and mount speakers discreetly without making my backyard look like a construction site, and preferably someone who wouldn't judge my choice of ambient background music. I called Mike, owner of Soundscapes AV, who'd installed my home theater system a few years back. He was professional, no nonsense, and good at hiding wires. Mike, I explained, I need a couple of outdoor speakers installed in my backyard, wired back to the garage. Need them to be pretty well hidden. Sure thing, Kevin, Mike said, his voice calm and professional. Rock speakers usually work well for that, blend right into the landscaping. What kind of system are they hooking up to? Standard receiver? Not exactly, I said. It's a custom controller unit this electronics guy Gary is building for, specialized ambient soundscapes. I held my breath. Mike paused for a beat. Right, ambient soundscapes. Look, Kevin, you tell me where you want the speakers, where the controller goes, I run the wires, make it look clean. What you play through them afterwards is your business. Just make sure that controller puts out a standard speaker-level signal. Relief washed over me. Mike didn't care. He just wanted to run wires. Perfect. Contract signed, deposits paid. The Highland Technology Deployment Initiative was officially underway. Installation day was nerve-wracking. Gary arrived buzzing with energy, carrying Pelican cases full of sensors, circuit boards, and wires. Mike showed up with his trenching machine and spools of outdoor-rated speaker cable. Gary spent an hour meticulously mounting the PIR sensor, partially concealed behind a dense evergreen shrub near the fence line. He used a laser pointer and complex calculations to aim it precisely at the Karen zone, the 3-foot-wide strip of her path and patio edge closest to my property. "We want maximum target acquisition, minimum collateral squirrel triggering," he explained seriously. Meanwhile, Mike expertly dug narrow trenches, laid the speaker wire, and positioned 2 surprisingly realistic-looking rock speakers amongst my flower beds. They were angled perfectly towards Karen's patio. He connected the wires, backfilled the trenches, and raked everything smooth. Within a couple of hours, unless you knew exactly where to look, you'd never guess my landscaping was now weaponized. Gary connected everything to the Raspberry Pi controller housed in a weatherproof box in my garage. He uploaded the Bagpipe audio files. I'd curated a selection: Scotland the Brave for initial shock, Amazing Grace, pipe band version, for sustained annoyance, and a particularly long, droning Pibroch piece titled Lament for the Old Sword, for moments requiring maximum psychological impact. We tested the remote trigger app Gary had built for my phone. Everything seemed ready. "Just gotta calibrate sensitivity and volume tonight," Gary said, packing up his gear. "Don't want it going off every time a leaf falls, or blowing out windows 3 blocks away. Unless you do?" He winked. That night, under the cloak of darkness, calibration began. I waited until Karen's house was dark. Test 1. Volume. I manually triggered Scotland the Brave via the app. The result was stunning. The sound erupted from the rock speakers with astonishing clarity and volume, shattering the suburban silence like a sonic grenade. Buster leaped about 3 feet in the air. Lights flicked on in houses down the street. I frantically mashed the volume down button on the app. Okay, needs adjustment. Significant adjustment. Test 2. Sensitivity. I crept out into the backyard, staying low, moving towards the fence line on my side. Nothing. Good. I tossed a small pebble into the Karen zone. Scree! Bagpipes erupted. Okay, too sensitive. I adjusted the sensitivity dial on the app Gary had designed, tossed another pebble. Nothing. Walked slowly towards the fence myself, mimicking Karen's path. When my foot crossed the imaginary line into the zone. Scree! Perfect. It also triggered when a large moth fluttered past the sensor. Less perfect, more tweaking. Gary had warned me PIR sensors could be finicky. Test 3. Duration and playlist. Should it be a short, sharp shock? 10 seconds? Or a full minute of inescapable Highland fury? I settled on 30 seconds as a good starting point. Long enough to be truly annoying, short enough to stop before someone could easily pinpoint the source. Scotland the Brave felt like the right opening salvo. During one slightly too loud volume test around midnight, I saw flashing lights approaching. My heart leapt into my throat. A police cruiser rolled slowly down the street, spotlight sweeping yards. Someone must have called about the noise. I ducked behind my grill, holding my breath. The cruiser stopped in front of my house. 2 officers got out, shining flashlights. "Evening, sir," one called out as I reluctantly emerged from the shadows. "Everything all right here? We got a call about some, strange noises. Caller thought maybe someone was playing bagpipes." Time for Phase 1. Plausible deniability. Bagpipes? I feigned bewildered innocence. "Really? That's bizarre." "No, officer. Quiet as a church mouse here. Didn't hear a thing. Maybe kids playing a prank down the street? Or the wind carries sound funny sometimes?" The officers exchanged skeptical glances. "Dispatch seemed pretty sure it came from this area," the other one said. shining his light towards my now silent rock speakers. "You sure you didn't hear anything unusual?" "Positive, officer," I said firmly. "Just enjoying the, quiet." They looked around for another minute, clearly unconvinced, but with nothing concrete to go on, then got back in their cruiser and drove off. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Deniability, established, system armed and ready. All I had to do now was wait for Karen to enter the kill zone. The waiting was the hardest part. I spent the next morning pretending to read on my patio, but really, I was watching. Watching Karen's back door, watching the fence line, listening. Buster seemed to sense my anticipation, pacing restlessly beside me. Around 11 a.m., it happened. Karen's patio door slid open. She emerged, wearing gardening gloves and carrying a small watering can, heading towards the rose bushes that grew inconveniently close to the property line, right in the heart of the sensor's target zone. My pulse quickened. This was it. She took one step onto the flagstone path, 2 steps, 3 steps. Her left foot crossed the invisible beam Gary had so carefully calibrated. Wham! The sudden, explosive blast of Scotland the Brave ripped through the tranquil Saturday morning air. It wasn't just loud, it was there, immediate and unavoidable, seeming to come from the very bushes beside her. Karen screamed, a genuine, startled shriek, and stumbled backwards, dropping her watering can with a clatter. Water splashed across her pristine flagstones. She spun around, eyes wide with terror and confusion, searching for the source of the sonic assault. The pipes wailed on, a triumphant brassy declaration of war. Dun 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 dun, for a full 30 seconds. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence crashed back down. Karen stood frozen, breathing heavily, clutching her chest. She stared wildly around her yard, then slowly, inevitably, her gaze fixed on my house. I ducked behind my grill just in time, stifling laughter that threatened to bubble up and give me away. Oh, this was better than I could have possibly imagined. The next few days were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Every time Karen ventured near that section of her yard, the phantom piper struck. Watering her roses? Scree! This time, Amazing Grace played with maximum mournful wail. Retrieving a dropped gardening glove near the fence? Boah! Highland Cathedral, perhaps. Attempting to sunbathe on a lounge chair placed strategically close to my property. Dodle-oo! Maybe a quick blast of a reel? She became jumpy, neurotic. She started peering suspiciously at my shrubbery. She'd creep towards the fence line, pause, listen intently, then scurry back. Her cat, a fluffy Persian named Snowball, triggered it once by chasing a butterfly into the zone, sending both Karen and Snowball scrambling for cover inside. She started complaining to other neighbors. "Did you hear that? The bagpipes! They just appear out of nowhere." Most neighbors, having only heard the sporadic, brief blasts, were sympathetic but baffled. "Bagpipes, that's weird. Maybe someone's practicing down the street." Kevin? Oh, I maintained perfect, angelic innocence. "Bagpipes, Karen? Again? How strange. Are you sure? Maybe it's tinnitus? Or perhaps atmospheric ducting carrying sound from that Highland Games event over in..." Quick Google search. Poughkeepsie? Naturally, she called the police. Repeatedly. The same 2 officers, Jones and Rodriguez, usually got the call. Their initial confusion quickly turned to weary skepticism. "Okay, ma'am," Officer Jones said on their 3rd visit that week, standing on Karen's lawn while she frantically pointed towards my house. "You're saying you hear bagpipes, but only when you stand right here?" "Yes, exactly. He's doing it somehow. It's targeted harassment," Karen insisted. They'd walk over to my yard. "Sir," Officer Rodriguez would sigh, Your neighbor, again, reports hearing phantom bagpipes originating from your property whenever she approaches the fence line. Phantom bagpipes, officer? I'd reply, shaking my head sadly. That sounds deeply concerning. For her, I mean. Perhaps she's under stress. Absolutely quiet over here. Just enjoying the birds. I'd discreetly disabled the system via my phone app the moment I saw their cruiser. They couldn't hear anything. They couldn't see anything, thanks to Mike's camouflage skills. I denied everything. Karen sounded increasingly unhinged. They started warning her about misusing police resources. Ma'am, we can't investigate a noise that doesn't exist when we're here. Checkmate. Of course, Karen wasn't one to give up. If the police wouldn't help, she'd go to the highest, or at least most bureaucratic, authority she knew. The Oakwood Valley HOA. She demanded an emergency hearing, armed with shaky cell phone videos capturing the sudden blasts of pipe music, though crucially not the source, and signed affidavits from neighbors who had admittedly heard loud, unusual sounds, but couldn't confirm they were bagpipes, or where they came from. The HOA board meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a room that smelled faintly of stale coffee and desperation. Brenda McNally, yes, that Brenda, from my Castle Gregskull neighbor's previous HOA battle Small World, Smaller Grudges, presided, looking severe. Karen presented her case with the dramatic flair of a seasoned prosecutor, playing her audio clips, detailing her sonic persecution, and demanding the board force me to cease my campaign of auditory terrorism. When it was my turn, I feigned bewildered innocence. Auditory terrorism? Miss Peterson, board members, I'm as baffled as anyone. I occasionally hear strange sounds, too. Perhaps it's plumbing from another house, or atmospheric phenomena. My property is perfectly quiet. I even invested in extra insulation recently. A lie, but it sounded good. Frankly, I'm concerned about Miss Peterson's perception of these noises. The board was stumped. Karen had recordings, yes, but no proof they came from my yard or that I was responsible. My denial was firm. They couldn't exactly authorize a search warrant for hidden speakers based on intermittent phantom bagpipes. They voted to monitor the situation and encourage neighborly dialogue. Translation: do nothing. I thought I'd won, but I underestimated Karen's tenacity and possibly her budget. A week later, a man in a polo shirt with Acme Acoustic Consulting embroidered on it was wandering around Karen's yard with complicated-looking microphone equipment. She'd hired her own expert. It took him 2 days, but he found them. Using directional microphones and spectrum analyzers, he pinpointed the source of the intermittent Highland Fury. 2 rocks in my flower bed. He presented his findings, complete with decibel readings and frequency charts, to the HOA board. The jig was up. Another emergency meeting was called. This time, they had evidence. Brenda McNally looked triumphant. Karen looked vindicated. I was summoned like a prisoner to the dock. Mr. Parker, Brenda began, her voice dripping with icy satisfaction. We have irrefutable evidence, provided by a certified acoustic consultant, that the source of the disruptive bagpipe noise is, in fact, located on your property, emanating from concealed speakers triggered by a motion sensor aimed at Miss Peterson's property. She slid the consultant's report across the table. Okay, Plan B. Confession and justification. All right, I sighed, dropping the innocent act. Yes, there are speakers. Yes, they play bagpipes. Yes, they're triggered by a motion sensor. Gasps from the board members. Karen nodded furiously. But, I added quickly, let's be clear. They only make noise when Miss Peterson enters a specific, narrowly defined zone immediately adjacent to my property line. She controls the sound. If she desires quiet, she simply needs to refrain from approaching that area. That's outrageous, Karen sputtered. "He's blaming me for his noise weapon." "It's not a weapon, it's a feedback system," I countered. "A gentle reminder about respecting personal space and reasonable ambient noise levels." Arguments ensued. Brenda quoted bylaws about nuisance noise and unapproved electronic installations. I argued about property rights and the definition of sustained noise. Karen demanded immediate removal and that I pay for her acoustic consultant and therapy sessions. Finally, Brenda banged her gavel. "Clearly," she announced, "a compromise is required." Translation: Our lawyer says forcing removal might be tricky, but we can probably make his life difficult. Mr. Parker, the board proposes the following. You will immediately reduce the volume of the sound system to a mutually agreeable low level. You will change the triggered sound from disruptive bagpipes to something neutral and brief, perhaps a simple chime. You will adjust the sensor's range to minimize accidental triggers. Failure to comply will result in maximum daily fines. It wasn't total victory, but it wasn't total defeat either. I still had my system. Karen didn't get the absolute silence she craved. I agreed to the terms mostly. Gary came back out. We lowered the volume significantly. We changed the default sound file from Scotland the Brave to a short, pleasant, 3-note chime. Though Gary, bless his heart, rigged the Raspberry Pi so I could remotely change the sound file back to bagpipes, or anything else, Barry Manilow, polka, whale songs, via a hidden interface on my phone. Just for testing, he assured me with a wink. We tweaked the sensor again. Now, when Karen approaches the fence line, instead of a blast of Highland fury, she gets a gentle ding-dong-dung. It's quiet. It's neutral. And somehow, knowing why it's chiming, knowing I control it, knowing I could unleash the pipes again at any moment, it might be even more annoying for her than the bagpipes ever were. Life in Serenity Acres returned to its usual state of quiet tension. Karen gives my rock speakers suspicious looks, but the phantom piper is silent. For now. I can grill in peace, mostly. And sometimes, late at night, when I know Karen's asleep, I might just cue up Lament for the Old Sword on the controller. Just for testing, of course. You have to make sure the equipment is still functional, right?